Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're tackling a big question. What should we really be feeding our cats? We're going to dig deep into this, guided by a really interesting article on homemade diets that came out in the September issue of Veterinary, which translates to Veterinary Life. So yeah, let's get right to it. But hey, before we really get going, if you're into these deep dives on your pet's health, do me a quick favor and hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and maybe drop a comment. It seriously helps the channel out and tells me you want to see more explainers just like this one. Thanks a bunch. All right, so let's just start with this. We all absolutely adore our cats, right? But are we actually feeding them what their bodies are built for? I mean, really built for. To figure that out, we have to go way back to their roots. See, to really get a handle on what your cat needs to eat, you've got to understand what a cat is. And I mean, for just a second, try to forget that fluffy little purr machine curled up on your sofa. At their core, they are tiny, perfectly engineered predators. And that leads us to this really important concept, a scientific term called hypercarnivory. It's a fancy way of saying that cats are not like us, or dogs, or rabbits. They are built to live on a diet that is almost 100% meat. And that one single fact, it shapes absolutely everything about them, from their teeth to the tips of their tails. So what does that actually mean, being a hypercarnivore? What does it look like on the inside? Well, let's take a look under the hood, so to speak, and see how they're perfectly designed for this job. Seriously, every single part of a cat's gut is a masterpiece of evolution for a meat eater. Just look at their teeth, right? They're like little daggers designed for ripping and tearing, not for grinding up plants. And in their saliva, there's literally no enzyme to break down carbs. Zero. Their stomach is tiny, but it's like a vat of acid. We're talking a pH of 1 to 2, which just obliterates nasty bacteria from their prey. And to top it all off, their whole digestive tract is super short, like an express lane for processing protein fast. Now, because of this specialized setup, there are a bunch of nutrients that cats just can't make themselves. They're not optional extras. These are absolute must-haves that they can only get from meat. We're talking about things like taurine, which is vital for their heart and eyes, and arginine, which they need to get rid of toxic stuff from their body. They also can't just take a carrot and make vitamin A out of it like we can. Nope, they need the real deal, pre-made straight from an animal source. Same goes for a fatty acid called arachidonic acid. So what does all this add up to? It means a cat's metabolism is basically a machine that's always running, expecting small, frequent, meaty meals. Think of it like a conveyor belt that never stops. Their digestive system is always on. And this is so important for every cat owner to hear. Their bodies are not built for fasting. If a cat stops eating for even 12 to 24 hours, just a day, it can cause serious, sometimes irreversible damage to their liver and kidneys. This is not something to mess around with. Okay, so knowing all this about their unique biology, it kind of puts every cat owner at a major crossroads, doesn't it? Do you put your faith in a bag of commercial cat food, or do you decide to take control and make it yourself? Let's really get into that debate. And the hesitation to trust commercial food, it's not coming from nowhere. Just look at this number, 48.4%. A 2023 inspection in Poland found that nearly half of the pet foods they looked at had messed up labels. We're talking things like ingredients listed that weren't actually in there, or stuff in the food that wasn't on the label at all. The nutritional info was just plain wrong. So yeah, you can see why people are starting to question what's really in that bag. So with that in mind, let's just lay out the options on the table. First, you've got your standard commercial food. The big one here is convenience, and if you get a good one, it's balanced. But the downside is, you're rolling the dice on quality, and like we just saw, labels can be sketchy. Okay, option 2, homemade cooked food. The upside? You control every single thing that goes into the bowl. But it takes a ton of time, and it is shockingly easy to get the nutrition wrong. And then there's the third path, raw feeding, often called barf. People who love it say it's more natural, but, and this is a big but, you're dealing with a real risk of bacteria like salmonella, and you need to be practically a nutritionist yourself to balance it correctly. So if you're leaning towards making the food yourself, it basically comes down to two main approaches, two different philosophies, really. Let's break those down. The main difference between the two, it's simple, cooking. With a cooked diet, you're gently heating the ingredients. The big advantage here is safety. It kills off nasty bacteria and can make the food a bit easier on their system. On the other side, you have the raw diet, like barf. The whole point here is to avoid heat and get as close as possible to what a cat would eat in the wild. We're talking mimicking a natural hunt, sometimes even using things like whole prey to tap into those primal instincts. But hold on. Before you start dreaming up recipes and heading to the butcher, we have to talk about the dangers. And I'm serious here, this is so important. Making your cat's food is way, way more complicated than just tossing some chicken in a bowl. I want you to look at this number for a second. 42. That is the bare minimum number of essential nutrients that you have to get right in the right proportions for a cat to be healthy. It's not just about protein. It's this incredibly intricate dance of vitamins, minerals, amino acids, everything. And if you get that dance wrong, the results can be catastrophic. And that complexity is where the real dangers lie. The number one risk? Getting the nutrition completely out of whack. Too much of this, not enough of that. Then, especially with raw food, you've got the very real threat of germs like Salmonella and E. coli. Plus, let's be honest, this isn't cheap, and it takes a lot of time. And please, please hear this. Grabbing a recipe off some random website is a terrible idea. The research shows that almost all of them are nutritionally incomplete. Okay, so with all those warnings, how on earth can you do this safely? Well, you have to be disciplined. Step 1, you need a recipe that's backed by science, not just someone's opinion on a forum. Step 2, and this is the gold standard, work with a veterinary nutritionist who can create a plan just for your cat. Step 3, hygiene has to be an obsession. You have to treat that kitchen like a surgical suite, especially with raw meat. And finally, remember that your cat's meal is only ever going to be as good as the ingredients you put into it. Quality matters. A lot. So when you take a step back and look at all of this, the biology, the choices, the risks, it all comes down to one thing. It points to the immense responsibility that falls on you, the owner. And this line from the article we're looking at just hits the nail on the head. With homemade diets, the responsibility for the cat's health rests not on the producer, but on the owner. Think about that. When you buy a bag of food, you're outsourcing that responsibility. When you decide to make it yourself, you are the producer. It's all on you. So here's the big takeaway from all this. There is no single magic bullet, no one perfect diet for every cat. The best diet is simply one that is complete, that is balanced, and that is safe. And whether that comes out of a bag or out of your own kitchen, well, that completely depends on what you're able to commit to in terms of time, money, and knowledge. And that really leaves us with one final question to ask ourselves. There's no doubt that we love our cats, right? But the real challenge is this. Is that love and care actually translating into a bowl of food that truly honors their biology and meets every single one of their complicated needs? It's something to really think about. Hey, thanks so much for sticking with me through this deep dive. I hope you found it helpful. If you did and you want to support what we do here, there's a link to our Buy Me a Coffee page in the description below. Any support helps us keep making these explainers. Thanks again, and I'll catch you in the next one.